Bigger Talks, Bigger Talks. We're back again with another episode, and I'm so honored and grateful for my next guest, Debbie Rosenfelt. She is a guide, a mentor, but more importantly, a phenomenal individual, a friend of mine, a client of mine, and she's here with us today. And we're going to talk about everything from authenticity to calming the chaos, being your most authentic self, and dealing with grief and loss and devastation. So, Debbie, how are you? Welcome to the Bigger Talks podcast. How's it going?
Good morning, Eric. Thank you so much for having me. I
Yeah,
really, really appreciate it. And so looking forward to our conversation. I have no doubt it's going to be so rich.
it's gonna be
So
so
rich.
rich and wealthy and healthy, and it's a miracle season.
That's right.
Before we
Yeah.
get into the details of who you are and how you calm the chaos in people's life, we have a heart. So, people
Yeah,
listening
you
who
do.
will be watching this as well. Debbie, my birthday was like 3 weeks ago, March 9th, and she gave me this heart. It's like, can you kind of like speak on this heart, Debbie, and where did it come from? I really love it.
Yeah, I can. So this heart came from the Holy Land. And the name of the company that sells these is called Dennehy Designs. And when I saw these, this is my signature,
Okay,
the heart.
heart.
My business name is CEO from the Heart. It just spoke to me. It spoke to me when I saw it and then said, I'm going to get these and I'm just going to give it away as my signature to each special person that's in my life. And when I got it, I was just like so touched. But what's so beautiful, each heart is very unique and it's made out of olive wood.
Yeah,
And again, it's from the Holy Land, so it's from Jerusalem. But what's so special about it, when we just hold it, it just fits right in the palm of your hand and it just feels good. And I even put mine under my pillow and I had some really cool dreams.
is it a place where we can order these from or get these from? Like, how does
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. It's called Dennehy Designs and you can just Google it.
Yeah.
And they also make crosses and hearts out of old piano wood or old organs. So they get these organs and pianos, and what they do is they recycle the wood. So they take it apart and they use it purposely. So it's like recycling, but in a very purposeful way.
I
Yeah.
just want to, read back to you your intentions for any and everybody that comes into your vibration. So on your website, you say, I help leaders calm the chaos through navigating big life changes and loss so they create deep fulfillment in every area of their lives. What does that
Yeah.
mean?
So what that means is, and it just came through because of my own personal experience. So when I was working, if you will, in corporate America as a CFO, that was just my position, if you will. I had the unfortunate news of learning that my son died by suicide.
Mm.
And it was that was in December 20th of 2008, and it was a huge shock. I mean, a huge shock to the system. And so over the last 15, soon to be 16 years, I have just been navigating through life and trying to figure it out. How does one navigate? And it's a question I ask almost everyone, especially on my podcast, is how does one navigate through loss or tragedy or whatever with grace? We each have our own path. I've created, if you will, the path of grace. But what I also recognize is everybody's path is different. And so there's no one way, there's no right way, and there's no wrong way. It's
Mm.
just all about navigating. How do we get through it? How do we literally navigate and allow the fullness of life to move through us as we're learning how to create a whole new normal? Yeah.
That's the best thing, could have said in that moment. There's no right way or no wrong way.
How do we
Create
navigate?
a new normal.
Yeah.
And for you, let's take it back just a bit. So when that, tragedy of news came to you, had that in your awareness, what was your first thought? Is this true? At the time where you and your son,
Total disbelief in a dream and you're waiting for someone to shake you and wake you up. But when the officer came down to my other son's business to find us and to notify us, when, he and we were all in the same room, and he looked at me and he started asking me questions like, "Do you have a son by the name of Ken Jones?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And clueless.
Right.
And then he says, "Does he live at 5433 North Pierce Lane in Prescott Valley, Arizona?" I said, "Yes, he does." And still clueless. And then he looked at me and he said, "I'm so sorry, but your son died by suicide." And I looked at him and I said, "How would you know?"
Yeah.
I mean, I looked at him because I immediately went into logic. I said, "How would you know?" Because Kenny lived in Prescott Valley, Arizona, and we were right here. And literally said that 2 or 3 times to him. And he said, "Well, the Prescott Valley police reached out to us so to let us know so we could notify you." And so we were all in total, absolute shock, disbelief. You don't know where up is up and down is down. You're just trying to figure out what is going on. Is this really happening?
And what was your relationship like at the time with your son? Were you guys
With
in
Kenny?
connection? Yeah, Kenny, did you guys communicate? Like, how was
Oh,
that?
yeah. Yeah. So the last time we spoke on the phone was on December 6th.
Okay.
And that's when I was down in San Diego for business, for work. The company that I worked for at the time, they were a design company and they were also a manufacturer of t-shirts. And so the design company was up here in Bothell, Washington, but the manufacturer was in Tecate, Mexico. And then the warehouse was in Tecate, California. So I just was crossing the border to go. And so I had crossed back over to on the US side, and I gave him a call just to talk to him. And he was so excited. He said, "Mom, I got next year, I'm going to be coming up for Christmas. I got the time off." And I said, "Great, Ken. I'm really looking forward to it." And I shared with him that I just had been to a parade, for Christmas and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it was a good conversation. He was excited. And that was the last time we spoke over the phone. The year prior, Kenny went silent for about 8 months, and that was, like, from, I wanna say, May of 2007 till about February of 2008 when he reached out and called me. And so he had just gotten a job. And so he called me in February and I hadn't heard from him those, 7 to 8 months. And so when I saw that he called on my phone, I said, "Oh my God, Kenny called. I got to give him a call." And I had reservations to fly down to Prescott Valley anyway. Cause I said, "Okay, now I'm going down because I'm not hearing from him. I want to make sure that he's okay." Yet he called me. So, and then he came up to Seattle and we had some great time together. He went down to California to see his dad and stepmom and his best friend and his mom. And then the last time I physically saw Kenny was actually in June of 2008, beginning of July, when he came up for a family friend's memorial service because a dear of which we called him Uncle Terry. And Kenny was really touched because he grew up with him. And so we went to the memorial service, and Kenny was the first one to stand up and talk about Terry in a very heartfelt way. And it moved all of us. And yeah, so that was really the last time I actually physically saw Kenny was in June, July of 2008.
Yeah, and I think for you, you have such a beautiful soul and spirit. I believe, and if I can share, I believe your son is with you right now.
Oh, yeah, I agree too.
I believe
Yeah.
he comes in times when you need him or when he wants your attention. But for the listeners, in that moment, from getting the news from the officer and then being in like disbelief to him actually, you know, transitioning, what was the pivot for you? Like, how did you transition in a way to what was the calmness to your chaos? What was the actual tangible, logical things you had to do or grow through to kind of like not accept it, but kind of like have ease and grace with it, where you can kind of get to the other side and have more peace inside or more
Yeah.
calmness?
And I think that happens just over time. But the very first thing that I did the day that we were notified is I pulled out my gratitude journal and I wrote out how grateful I was for the 30 years that I had with Kenny. That was the first thing. And I knew it was really, really easy to go down the dark path. I could feel it in my body, and I said, "I can't do that. I don't want to do that." And I mean, it was painful. I mean, really painful. It's like it was just taking one step at a time, one day at a time. And also, what happened was I'm one of these doers. So when chaos occurs, I step in and I get stuff done. And so I had a mission, and the mission was first off, we had to get down to Arizona. Well, it was snowing here. Like it was like snowing a lot, and where the city was shutting down. We couldn't even get flights out.
Wow.
So my husband, Todd, was into trains at the time. So he would say, "Let's take the train down." And I looked at him and I said, "I don't want to take the train down." We took the train. We had to because we couldn't get out. So just having that support around me, and we took the train down. Todd and I and my other son Brian, we took the train down to Sacramento. My uncle picked us up, took us to the airport. So it's having the people around us, family. I had at work. It just so happened my sister and my best friend's mother was working there as well. I had a lot of family support around me. And what it means is that it's not that they didn't have to do anything, it was just their presence. Because what we're looking for is we're looking for stability. We're looking for something that we can ground in. And when we have people that just create a container, and it's not that they're doing anything on purpose, it's just their presence is a safe container.
Yeah.
And so it's just taking that one step at a time and having you do what you have to do. And so because Kenny lived down in Prescott Valley, Arizona, after we had two, funeral services, memorial services, one was here in Seattle, one was down in Petaluma, California. It's the hard stuff was after what we had to do is go down, pack up all his personal things, and it felt so violating, but we were going through his stuff. He put me in charge. He even put it in his notes that he said, "Mom will take care of everything." And he told us what he wanted to, what he wanted us to do. And
Oh,
we got um, one note that had a whole bunch of notes for friends and family.
wow.
And then we got a separate note that I mean, Kenny was someone that took care of people. So he told us what to do with the house, his car. He told us to take some things back to Costco. I said, "No, I'm not going to do that." There is just so much to do and so much to deal with, and you just do it a little bit at a time. But what also occurred is when I went back to work after coming home from Prescott Valley and the first time, I made a note to myself. I said, "There's got to be more to life than this." And I wrote on a post it note, and I still have it in my car. I said, "Follow your heart," to remind me to follow my heart. Yeah. And so that was the beginning of, if you will, a disassembling of the old life and learning how to create a new life. And I decided that I wanted to become certified as a coach, and I wanted to go in. I took a leadership program, a year-long leadership program, because I needed to dive in and I had to figure it out.
And what were you doing
Yeah.
prior to that before you moved into like coaching certifications? Were you
Yeah. Working in corporate America as a
right?
CFO. Yeah, so in accounting, if you will, finances, financials. And and then in 2017, I had 5 family members die within a 7-month period. First, it started off with my dad in December of 2016, and then my cousin Bill from esophageal cancer in February. And then in April, my sister-in-law, she was only 46 years old. She died from Hodgkin's lymphoma, but she had been going through chemo treatment. Well, because of the chemo and all the treatment, her liver stopped functioning. I never been through an experience where you support someone through their dying process. And so myself and my other sister-in-law, another Deborah Rosenfelt, who was a nurse, um, we were there in Walla Walla and support Jeff and his mom and dad through that. And then in May, my kitty, Kiki, of 15 years, died, and, she was the one that helped get me through Kenny's loss. That was a heartbreak, and then my uncle died, in June, which was my dad's brother, in June from liver cancer. So, and my thought process was, I've already been through the worst of the worst, so I'm gonna be good. Well, that was a lie, a fallacy. So what happens is when we have grief after grief after grief after grief, what happens, that's called grief stacking. Grief stacking. Yep. And because I was processing it, but I wasn't like talking to somebody about it. I was just going through the motions of helping everybody and then doing this and that. Well, finally I said, "You know what? I think I need some help." And so
Yeah.
I talked to my pastor at the time, and he gave someone a name of someone. And so I made the first phone call, and just making the phone call, I felt a huge relief, and that was good. But then decided a year later to go through some training
Yeah.
through the grief recovery method
Yeah.
to help people with their grief.
Yeah.
So
It's so good. That was such a beautiful narrative that was your reality at that time. And I want to take it back to Kenny. Kenny is such a great soul, and
yeah,
you led the conversation with grace. And it's interesting. Kenny had the intentions to leave life with grace, right?
yeah,
He
yeah.
left a note. He left two notes.
He left 2 notes.
That's
Yeah.
how big of a heart he had to leave
Yes.
you and everyone else with directions and guidance, because
It's
he had to do what he had to do for whatever reason. But he left a note. That says a lot about who he was and who he is still
yeah.
spiritual, like so
Oh,
much grace.
absolutely. Well, and also Kenny, in his letters, in his note, he said it wasn't that he was looking for more love
Yeah.
because he felt truly loved by his family and friends, is not that he needed more friends. But it's like he checked off all the boxes.
Hmm. As in, like, he
And
served his purpose, you know?
right. And he was looking for transcendence
Mm,
because to one of his friends, he said to Carlos, "I hope you find transcendence." And it's here. I
yeah.
know it's here. But here's something else I believe, Eric. I truly believe that Kenny and I had a soul contract
Yeah. Believe
to
that.
take my life to a deeper level. Because in order for us to really transcend ourselves, we have to really experience, well, we don't have to, but experience the depth of life at the deepest, deepest
Yeah.
parts. Yeah.
And it's interesting because I believe that. I believe, he served his sole purpose in that time that he had. There's another thing that came up when you were speaking as I was listening. You gave me years, and to people who know me, I'm into numbers, right? I'm the numbers guy, numerology. So 2008, if you look at 2008 collectively, that's a new start equals one. We do 2 plus 0 plus 8 is 10, which equals one. Your birthday is October 16th,
October.
right?
Yes. Yep.
So you got 1 and 6 is 7 plus 1, because 10 and 1 0 for October equals 8, right? If you do
Yeah.
8 plus those years plus 1 equals 9 for your personal year number in those spaces, what 9 comes to is completion, right?
Oh,
Because you're about to go into a new year, a new number.
yes.
So here we go. Let me take it even further. 2017, 2 plus
Yeah.
0 plus 1 is 3, 7 is 10.
Yes.
It's another 1 year.
Wow.
And you add your 8 with your 1 is another 9. Completion again. You're starting a new cycle. So it's
Wow.
interesting, the commonality of, like, when people are leaving, you are growing into a new energy field
Yeah.
for your
Yeah.
soul.
Yeah.
And I think most times, depends on how it happens, but I believe most times, even if it's not bad, we mourn someone leaving Earth. And sometimes not even about us, it's about them. And sometimes they want to be celebrated, right?
Yes,
Like you
absolutely.
said, he checked off the boxes, he wanted to transcend, and however way he saw it. And it just it's so interesting that you had to experience that in this lifetime, but you have all the data, all the downloads, and all the information when dealing with grief. Now, what I want to do now is take it back earlier when you were young. If you can remember, think about a time in your mind when you were a little girl. When was the first time, if you can remember, you had to calm the chaos? And you did it and you didn't know you did it or you was aware. If you can remember. Teenage, it could be younger years before you had kids. It could be whatever it is, just take you back while you really had to calm the chaos, like early on.
That's a great question, Eric. I'm thinking back, but it's just like I felt like a very lost soul when I was younger because how I was raised is I was with very strict parents and it was always deferred to my father. I ended up being a rebel. So I'll share a little bit about my human design because we talk about that as well.
You're
So I'm
manifesting.
a manifester, initiator. And what I've learned is I am not to be controlled. So the things that I would do because I was controlled as a teenager, I would rebel. I would say, I'm not having anything to do with this. Even at the age of, I think it was 18 when I decided to move down to California to be with my grandparents just because I needed to get away. I just needed to get out. But I initiated that. I called my grandparents and asked them if I could do that. Another example is I'll go back to when I was 4 years old. I was told I ran away. And when
Oh,
I learned about myself as a manifester, I'm going, no, I didn't run away. I just wanted to go home. I was with my Uncle Conrad, which was at my grandparents' house. So here in Seattle area, they lived on the west side of Magnolia. We didn't live too far away from them. And so for some reason, I wanted to go home. I decided I was going home.
4 years old.
4 years old. And I remember specifically walking down these really, really steep stairs because my grandparents had steep stairs at their house. And I just went about my way. And um, so I went through Fort Lawton at the time, which is now called Discovery Park, but Fort Lawton was an Army base. I specifically remember being picked up by some kind of an Army officer. I remember him wearing his uniform, and I think it was a little black Volkswagen Bug. I don't remember anything after that,
Mhm.
but I remember everything leading up to that. And so I was just being me. I
Right.
was just doing
On
what
your
I do. Yeah.
being your most authentic self. You also said the best thing a person can have in their life is support, right? Having people be
Yes.
present, right? Just in their energy field when
Yeah.
they're going through something. But how does this, what I think happens with some people, how does one be present with the grief when they're losing someone or losing something or they have to move on? Because I feel like most of us, we're not really present in the grief. We're even suppressing it. Like you said, grief stacking, or we're
Yeah.
not looking at it because it's too afraid to look at. So you working with a client or anyone, how do you get them to be present with what they're dealing with for them not to be so afraid of it? How does that work from your perspective when you're working with someone?
Yeah. So I just be present with them.
Mm.
And I also remind them there's nothing to fix. They're not broken.
Mm. So good.
And uh, and we have believed that we're broken. We're not broken.
Mm.
'Cause that's why we're here is to experience the fullness of life. And so it's listening to stories and asking people about their loved one because we just want to hear their name. We want to keep their energy alive. We want to keep their name alive. We want to here's a funny thing. When I was seeing a grief counselor after Kenny died, I looked at her one day and she asked me what's going on. And I said, for some reason, I had this notion that I thought I was going to forget Kenny
Mm.
because he's dead. But those are the kind of thoughts that go through our mind when we're in that shock and disbelief. And she looked at me with a straight face, very kindly, very softly, and she said, Deb, what makes you think you're going to forget Kenny? And I looked at her and I said, oh, yeah. So it's just like she brought me back to reality. And so it's just honoring where we are in the moment. It's being present in the moment with what we're feeling. And so it's just like when I was serving as a chaplain here with our community, when I would be called out on a call, and it usually was on Saturdays because that was my shift. I'm no longer doing that. I would just be present in the moment with what was going on. There was nothing to fix. There were people that were wailing, crying in disbelief themselves, and you just be calm and you just be present. And then you help them with the practical things. So we had a, in those moments, we would, if the medical examiner released the family member to the family, I would help them make the arrangements for the funeral home to come pick up their loved one and to start the process for them. But it was just to be with them until family came or friends came or their support system came for that moment. So anytime you're with a loved one that or a friend or anyone has just lost somebody, just be present with them. You don't have to say anything. If it's a few days later, just call and check in on them and just say, "Hey, I'm just checking in." And even get some grief groceries,
Mm.
or if their lawn needs to be mowed, just go do it. Don't ask. That's the last thing you want to do is ask them questions because they won't be able to answer you. They won't be able to respond because they don't know. They just can't answer that question.
Yeah, that was you said something about keeping the energy alive. That is
Yes.
so vital. Is keeping the energy alive. Now, as a chaplain, what is the intentions of a chaplain? Because I have my notion and perception of it, but what is it?
I see it as a companion. The old definition of chaplain is that we would come and pray for you and stuff. Certainly, I'm there to pray with you if that's what you want. And I had a lot of people that wanted that, yes. But that's not something that we force
Okay.
on somebody because we all have been raised in a different type of spirituality or religion. We even had people who would sometimes push us away because of the old paradigm thought, but
Mhm.
we're there just to provide comfort and be a companion in that moment. It's not forever, it's just that very moment. There's times when we serve as a fire. I've given my tennis shoes. I had some spare tennis shoes in the car, and they came out from the fire with no shoes on.
Yeah.
Said, "Would you like a pair of shoes?" So it's little things like that, giving them snacks, water, having a dry place for them to come in and in the rig to be able to call family, provide them a phone so they can call somebody if they don't have their phone. Sometimes Red Cross would come, depending on the circumstances, if it was a fire. So there was a dry place for people to come. So it's to serve the individual in the moment, but not for us to push anything on them because that's not serving. We're there to be in the moment. Yeah.
Projecting, pushing. Now, did you hold this position prior to Kenny transition or after?
No, that was all a God thing. That happened October 21st, 2018. It was a Sunday morning at about 11 o'clock. And I just got home from church and I was hearing these sirens get closer and closer. And then they stopped right in front of my neighbor's house. And I said, "Oh dear, I better go across the street." And then I stopped myself and I said, "No, you will know if you need to go." And then all of a sudden, like 10 seconds later, I heard this huge blood curdling scream. And I just ran over there. And Eric was on the floor screaming and crying because the paramedics just pronounced his wife had died.
Mm.
And Peggy was a spry woman. I mean, she's 65 years old, very active. I mean, nothing was wrong with her that we knew of. And I just held Eric. I just went over there and I just held him. And he was just sobbing. And then in that case, which I didn't know at the time, but when after someone, the fire department calls, says, pronounce somebody had died, the police come in to do their investigation. Well, at that time, with the police, a chaplain came, and this was Dale. And so I met Dale. And so I was just there to help Eric, but the police were there to do their investigation. Dale was there to serve as chaplain. And so I was there through the whole time. I helped Eric call his sister to have her come up. and I learned a little bit about what a chaplain is and what they do. And so Eric's sister arrived and the medical examiner arrived to pick up Peggy. And as I knew it was time to leave, I could just feel it. And I walked out the door and I was coming back home. I looked up to the sky and I said, I wonder what it takes to become a chaplain. And it's history from there. That's when it all started. So I joined Support 7 and have been working with South County Fire. And as of the end of December, I resigned from being a chaplain. So
And it's beautiful when we allow life to take us on journeys that we don't understand where it's taking us, and then a new opportunity or possibility
exactly.
happens, right? Then you said support 7, your birthday equals 7. So it's like, look at the synchronicities and numbers again.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And I didn't even know this history of you and being a chaplain and praying
Yeah.
for the space and being present. Also, you being a manifester, it makes sense. It's like you're there to inform and not be controlled, right?
Yes. Yep.
Um, so
Absolutely.
in this part of your life where you are now, what type of spiritual work have you done to kind of fully, embrace where you are to what you're doing right now to get more out of yourself for your peace,
Yes.
for your calmness when chaos does happen that you're not expecting? How do you kind
Yeah.
of melt down it in a beautiful, graceful way so you can feel free?
So I had the pleasure of being raised with a foundation. And the foundation was I was born and raised Catholic. And I went to, CCD and I went to a Catholic school and stuff like that. I have that foundation. I no longer follow that methodology, if you will. God is a so much deeper than that. God has nothing to do with religion. Jesus has nothing to do with religion. It's having the depth of going deep inside and knowing that God and Jesus is in us
There we go.
and spirit is always with us and guides us every single day. We just have to be open to listen. And it's just these last couple of years that I've gotten deeper and deeper into the spirituality of listening to God, listening to spirit. I have some wonderful spiritual mentors that too are growing. I listen to Richard Rohr.
Yeah.
He is amazing. He has this perspective of beyond the Catholic faith, beyond whatever. It's just so much more depth. And that's what this journey has been all about is the depth of life, the depth of really experiencing our humanness. So, my belief is we are spiritual beings here having a full human experience and to experience it all. And so, even all the hard stuff. And for me, it's been loss and grief. I've even lost businesses or closed businesses, but there's been experiences that no one can replace because of that.
Yeah.
And I can just share my experience and my message with people so they can learn from that as well.
And
Yeah.
it's so great that you said that because we all deal with loss on different levels and different entities
Yes.
and energy. You said something to me a few days ago, maybe last week, and you said something about the ocean, like
Oh,
like
yeah.
the ocean, right? It's never
Yes.
flowing, it's ever gone. Can you just for a bit unpack and elaborate on that ideology that you came to understanding? Because I think it's beautiful for people to listen. How to
Oh, yes. Well, it was actually Natalie that shared that with me as we were having some really deep conversations. But she said, have you noticed that the ocean, the waves are always moving?
mm,
And I said, I just stopped and I said, whoa, that is so true. The ocean is always moving. The waves are always coming in and going out, coming in and going out. Well, it's just like with our heart and our how our body functions. The ocean doesn't know that it's moving or not moving. It just is. just like our heart is always moving. We're not aware of it. It's just like a fish being in a fishbowl. It has no idea it's in water. But just to have the forethought that the ocean is always moving, it blows my mind. It's like there's no rest in that.
Yeah, and it's like the heart. It talks about the heart is constantly beating and happen. It's not thinking about it
Yes.
because what I just discovered is the ocean, as in our heart within our body,
Yes.
is forever present, right?
Yes.
And when you're
Yes.
present, you're allowing things to flow and move and maneuver, and then you can take, a brief
Yes.
look at your ocean. How is my ocean moving? But when we're not present with our ocean, our heart space,
Yes. Yes.
really
Yes.
know it's moving. We're just even on autopilot, or we're in fear, or we're just trying to control or stay busy because we're afraid of what we want to look at, right? And it's just a beautiful thing to know that we're all here to serve a higher purpose. And I think you're serving your higher purpose by being you. With all the challenges, changes, and pains and breakthroughs and all of the grief and everything, you show up in such a beautiful way that you make the complex easy to understand.
Mm,
Now
mm.
that I'm having more of understanding of who you are, I get why you're here to calm the chaos.
Yeah. So one more thought I just had as you were sharing.
Yeah.
So just think underneath the ocean, like deep, deep
Yeah.
in the ocean, it's so still.
Oh, right.
It's quiet.
It's good.
That's what we are to be, is have that stillness and quiet inside of us with our little clownfish or yellowfish or whatever beautiful tropical fish that are swimming down deep in the ocean, to bring that beauty and that stillness and quietness inside of us out of our heart.
Stillness is it's
Through
freedom.
our,
Really.
it is.
So
It's
great.
pure freedom.
So what's next for Debbie, and where's she at now in her, life, and like what's next? I mean, I feel like books. You do have a podcast. Tell me
Yes.
more. Tell us more. Like what's next for Debbie?
Oh gosh, there's so many possibilities, Eric, and that's what I'm really excited about.
Mm.
I really want to do a TED Talk, and a colleague, a friend, did a TED Talk, and she worked with someone. I think his name is Daryl Stinson, so I'm going to check that out. So that's one thing. Um, I believe speaking somehow.
Oh yeah, you have to speak. You have the voice.
And but also using my voice in other ways. So, I have this phenomenal book that I found when we were down in Malibu called, When Things Fall Apart, and it's Heart Advice for Difficult Times by Pima Chodron. I
She's a
actually want to record that in my voice
uh
and be able to offer that to my clients that
oh
I work with. Anything and everything is possible. I'm just really, really excited, and I'm in the inner circle
yeah.
with a group of people and Kathleen, and so I'm really excited because there's so many possibilities.
Yeah, I mean that's beautiful. Shouts out to Kathleen Cameron, the
Yes,
manifestation queen. She's amazing.
yes, yes, she is.
So TED Talk, I feel that strongly from you. When
Mm.
we get off this, we got to talk about that.
Yeah.
However, for you, the podcast, tell people about the podcast. 'Cause I was on your podcast and we had a
Ah,
great
yes,
episode. I mean, Debbie had
yes.
me in tears talking about so many different things, but tell us about the podcast and how we can find you and where it's
Yeah.
going to
So
be.
the podcast is Elevated Embodiment, and the purpose behind it is to share the message for those who choose not to seek help after
Mhm.
loss, after grief, to be able to have something to turn to be able to listen to other people's stories. So the first episode is just me sharing my story. And thereafter, I've had guests, and you were one of the guests, and they share their own story of how they navigated through their grief and loss with grace or without grace. one of my next podcasts that a solo that I want to do is just to share what the question that you were asking. So, how did you navigate
Yeah.
through your loss over the course of the years? And so, just to be able to give, one on one accounts of the different things that I did with the intention to give people ideas because my way is not necessarily your way, but it gives you the support and the guidance of the different things that you can check out.
All right, last but not least, before we get out of here,
Yeah.
have an energy update in the universe and the collective consciousness and the cosmos. What advice do you have for people listening, for just the universe, that we all should be embodying to have a more fulfilling time or to deal with the energy change and the planet is changing, right? What is it that we can do as individuals to be more whole, more complete, more grounded in our heart space, or just in general, to have more grace moving forward?
Yeah. Yeah. Be curious.
Hey, it's my favorite word.
Be curious and explore and discover because there's nothing better than an adventure, and life is an adventure. And when we can allow ourselves to be curious, there's so much more that can show up for you and that can come from it. So just
Be
be
curious.
curious. Yeah.
People, be curious. Debbie, you are phenomenal. Thank you for this phenomenal
Thank
episode.
you,
Thank
Eric.
you for being so
Thank you.
authentic and transparent and sharing your story. I'm pretty sure this will heal many people. It healed parts of me and made me understand more why you really in my life, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So I just want to say thank you once again, and to people listening, follow Debbie, connect with her. I'll put all her details in the show notes. This was an incredible episode. Shouts out to Simplified Impact, the marketing expert, for all my content and videos via YouTube, social media. And don't forget to get your Miracle Season merch at itsmiracleseason.co. But don't forget to follow Debbie and all of her amazing work. And I'll talk to you guys soon. This was an amazing episode. Bigger Talks Podcast. We're out. Peace.